Hey guys, happy St. George's Day! Whoop whoop! As you can probably tell from the English flag here and the British flag here, and, well, my accent obviously, I'm English, and so I thought to celebrate today, it's Shakespeare's birthday, it's St. George's Day, and it's International English Language Day, the 23rd of April, I would read some centuries-old English poetry. So, first I'm going to start with um, the old bard himself, Mr. William Shakespeare. I'm going to read Sonnet 18, which was written sometime in the 1590s. So this is towards the end of the reign of Elizabeth I. It's like a couple years after the sinking of the Spanish Armada, so yeah, you can dunk on the Spanish by reading some English poetry. And I'm going to attempt to pronounce it in the actual pronunciation of Shakespearean English. So people mistakenly call it Old English. It's not Old English. Old English is like Beowulf. That's like Anglo-Saxon. That's no. This is early modern English. Yes, early modern English. Shakespeare is not old. It's early modern. And I'm aware that there is a linguist called David Crystal who has made his own pronunciation of Shakespearean English, but I disagree with a few of what he says, just based on my own research, so I will pronounce it the way I feel is best, but you know, as you can't really tell, it's like Schrodinger's pronunciation, so whatever. I just think it sounds nice, and it fits with what I've, you know, researched. But I'm not I'm not a linguist. I studied some linguistics when I was in university, but I'm not a linguist or a philologist by trade. So, yeah, this is more this like hobbyist kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm gonna read Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Because a lot of modern times they'll pronounce it, and it makes sense, they'll pronounce it with a modern accent, but they'll either pronounce it in RP, like British English, like BBC English, or you'll hear some Americans say, actually, Shakespeare sounded more like Americans. He didn't. He sounds... The closest I can think of, based on what this actually sounds like, is either some varieties of Irish English or people in the West Country of England, rather than Americans. He doesn't really sound American that much. So I'll just read it. I'll just read it, and then you can tell me what you think, whether you think it's what it sounds like. Okay. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Thou wins to shack the darling buds o' May, and summer's laceth all too short a dat. Some time to at the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimm'd, and every fair from fair sometime declines, bechance or nature's changing course untrimm'd. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wonder'st in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou grow'st. So long as men can breathe or eyes can say, so long lives this, and this gives life to they. So, that's some Shakespeare. Has his nice iambic pentameter going. So yeah, I actually really like Shakespearean sonnets. I just love how they sound. They have a really lovely rhythm, and it's just a lot better than a lot of modern poetry, which doesn't rhyme at all, and it just sounds, I don't know, kind of shit. So yeah, I actually really enjoy Shakespearean sonnets. They're one of my favourite forms of poetry, and when I do write poems, which is not very often because, I don't know, it's just, it takes a lot to write a poem. It does actually take quite a lot to write a poem. Um, but when I do like to write them in Shakespearean sonnet form because they just have a lovely taste. They have a lovely taste, a lovely flavour to them. But this rhythm, this ba-dum 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 ba-dum, the iambic pentameter that keeps everything going, he wasn't the first person to invent it. It's been in English poetry for quite a long while. And it's interesting that when you read these, you have to keep to that ba-dum 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 rhythm, otherwise it doesn't sound very good. And sometimes it actually means that you have to pronounce words with a different stress to how you would normally pronounce them. It's quite interesting. And also the pronunciation you can see changes quite a bit. For example, in modern English, some of the rhymes don't work at all, like, thou art more lovely and more temperate, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Well, that doesn't rhyme in any dialect of English I know. Shorter date and temperate. Like, no one says temperate or shorter dut. So, yeah, you do have to kind of shift your pronunciation quite a bit in order to get it to rhyme and fit in the rhyming scheme properly. Yeah. So the other poem that I want to read is a bit earlier. It's from Geoffrey Chaucer. Good old Chaucer. Wrote the Canterbury Tales, and this is the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales. So this is Middle English, so this is even older. This is from around 1387, which is only like 35 years after the Black Death. Yes, that Black Death, that bubonic plague. This is from like 35 years after that, so he lived through that. Bet he had some tales. Canterbury Tales. So yeah. So I'm gonna read this, and it will sound quite different, I think, to early modern English. It will be even harder to understand, and yeah, it sounds a bit more like Scottish or something like that. It's quite funny in that regards. And you'll notice he also has the same ba-dum 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 rhythm, but his rhyming is a bit different. So yeah, I'll just read it and then you can have a go. And once again, I'm not an expert in the correct pronunciation, but I'm going to try my best because I think it sounds better when you stick to the original pronunciation and you stick to the correct rhythm of iambic pentameter without adding or taking away or putting stress in the wrong place. So yeah, let's go. Okay. Whan at Aprill with his shoures sowed, the drocht of March hath perced to the road, and bathed every vine and switch liqueur, of which vertu engendered is the flour. Whan Zephyrus sake with his sweete breath inspiredeth in every olten earth, the tender croppus and the youngest son hath in the ram his alf course run, and smale fowl as maken melodie that slepen all the nicht with open ee. So pricketh them nature in her courages, than longen folk to go on pilgrimages. And palmers for to seken strongest strons, to ferne halwes coath in sundry lons. And specially from every shearer's end of England to Canterbury the wend, the holy blissful martyr for to sake, that him hath helpen when that they were sick. Befell that in that season on a day, in Southwark at the Tabard does he lie, ready to wenden on me pilgrimage, to Canterbury with full devout courage, at nicht was come to that hostelry, well 29 in a compagnie. Of sundry folk, be avontury fall, in fellowship and pilgrims were they all. that towards Canterbury Walden Reed, the chambers and the stables were in weed, and well we were an acid at the best, and shortly, when the sonnet was to rest, so had he spoken with him every chone, that he was on your fellowship known, and made a forward early for to rise, to take our way there as he yo devise. But natheless will he have time and space, but natheless will he have but natheless will he have team. But natheless will he have team and space, but natheless will he have team and space, ere that he further in this tale pass. We thinketh it accord down to his own, to tell you all the condition of each of them, so it seemed me, and which they were in, and of what degree, and eke in what array that they were in, and at a knicht then will he first begin. Okay, so that's some fun, really archaic English poetry to celebrate English Language Day. I really like Chaucer and Shakespeare just because of the rhyming scheme that they use, and the general meter of their poems that they use. I think they're really, really just lovely. They're so good. Oh, I wish modern people wrote poetry like this, because it works really well and it sounds good. Instead of like whatever. What is that really trashy poetry which is just like, it doesn't even rhyme and they're just complaining about bullshit? I forgot what it's called. But yeah, that stuff sucks and this stuff is awesome. But, I mean, what do you like in... Do you like poetry? Do you not? Do you prefer, like, stories or movies or anything? Today is a kind of day to celebrate the English language, and, you know, I actually am really glad that English is my mother tongue. Not just because it's a very useful language to know, but I don't know, I just like it. It's a very cool language, I think. It has a very interesting history from being kind of suppressed under the Normans and the Vikings, and then from being like the language of the underclass and the plebs, and then it kind of gained prominence until it was used throughout the country, and then it was used and spread around the world by the British Empire, and until today, where it's like the global lingua franca. So it's kind of like a language that comes from a very not noble. What's the word? Humble. It comes from a very humble kind of backstory, where it was regarded as one of like the crappier languages in Europe during the Middle Ages, and then it kind of just raised in prominence until it's the global lingua franca today. So that's like, it's like a nice story of the underdog kind of thing. Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting language. It has a fun pronunciation, and the spelling system sucks. I won't lie about that. The spelling sucks. Comparatively, the grammar's not that difficult when you compare it to other languages, especially European languages. The grammar is not that hard in comparison. But like, it does have a lot of weird things that make it a difficult language to learn, and some things that make it quite an easy language to learn, like the fact that it doesn't have grammatical gender. That's a plus. We don't need to say that this flag is feminine or masculine or neuter. It's a flag. Like, it's a flag. So, yeah. I don't know. If you're watching this, do you like English? Is English your native language? Is it a language that you studied? And is there anything in the English language that you really like? So, any poetry, stories, books, movies, music? Let me know down below, and I will also put the actual lyrics, the words to these poems, down in either the description or in like a pinned comment or something. Yeah, so have a good English language day, and, you know, do some things in English, I guess. Okay, see ya!